Welcome everybody to this edition of the Cemetery Board meeting. I'm Dan Shapiro, I'm Secretary of State, Cesar Perales is designated as chair.
Bob Welch representing Dr. Howard Zucker, Commissioner of Health.
Now Chris Wiles is on his way, he's been spotted, he's not here yet, but we will maintain his seat for him when he gets here.
Tony Melillo, counsel to the Cemetery Board.
Chester Butkowitz, Assistant Director for the Cemetery.
Mike Seelman, Senior Investigator, Division of Cemeteries.
Len Breen, Investigator, Division of Cemeteries.
Suzanne Dressel, Clerk, Division of Cemetery.
Joe Ambrose, Associate Accountant, Division of Cemetery.
And we have our Director, Louis Polishuk, attending by phone today. Louis, say
Yeah,
hello.
by some bizarre state statute, if you needed me for a quorum, a phone wouldn't count. We need a video link.
Well, since
But
you're not
I
a
don't
board
count
member,
for
you don't
anything
count for a
that
quorum
doesn't
anyway,
matter.
Louis.
You need one of those those
Yeah.
portable microphones. down
Well,
there.
can you
Just
hear
hit
us
that-
okay, Lou?
Oh, I can hear you fine.
Oh, good.
I actually litigated this issue in law.
Yeah, did you? Because I never thought that we were proscribed from doing that, but that's all right.
I'll send you a copy of the decision. It involves the State Board of Real Property Services.
Very good. Former employer of mine. Anyway, welcome, Chris. Welcome. We've done nothing but say you weren't here.
So now we get to do it again.
So now you're here.
We didn't even approve the minutes without you.
Good.
No, we didn't actually.
We want you to know you can't stop at a throughway stop without being noticed.
That's right, you were
Joe was
spotted.
keeping track of
You
me.
were
I know.
spotted. So well, let's move on to the minutes then. Have folks had an opportunity to review them?
Yes.
Any questions or comments, changes?
I had one, or a couple.
Good, go for it.
Tony was gonna check with the AG's office as to whether you guys could bring the petition yourselves.
I've got I left a message with Bob Malik, I haven't heard back.
Oh,
So,
okay. Oh, are we doing this, reviewing the regulations? We are, because that's what we're gonna look at today, right?
Columbarium issue?
Yeah, no,
No.
I think it was what Tony sent out, wasn't it?
Oh, that one, yes.
yeah, we can,
Chat
I'll
about
be
that.
addressing it in my.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so,
That's it.
so no changes to the minutes. Have a
So
motion?
moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye?
All right, you're approved. Now, Mr. Melillo, legislation and regulation. What's happening pending? You circulated documents.
Right, we've circulated, we have previously circulated the redraft of the financial regulations. And then we've also just recently circulated the redraft of the annual report. And the checklist. The checklist called,
Internal control.
internal controls, right. So those have been sent to the board members and to interested parties. They're also available here if anyone wants to pick up a copy. We're going to be meeting, I believe, on Monday with Dave Fleming and Bruce from Pine Lawn, Bruce Geiger, to talk about all the changes.
Right. Any other feedback that you had from
No.
folks, or just that we're waiting for the next meeting?
Yep.
All right.
Is the bonding covered on that insurance they're supposed to carry for trustees and officers?
Say that again?
Right,
The short answer is yes.
okay.
The theory is that we spoke with an insurance broker who says that, as we all suspect, that fidelity bonding is kind of obsolete and commercial crime insurance is a far more useful product.
Yeah.
We've gotten some pushback as to the fact that we didn't limit the amount that you need to carry, but so far nobody has said that the approach we were thinking about is the wrong direction in which to go. But we'll find out more on Monday.
Right.
The other thing that occurred to me, Louis, you'll understand this. Could we ask for the names of the directors and whether they've had any training with regard to directors' responsibilities and fiduciary duties?
That's, you know what, that's a great idea. Where the logical place to put that in, Tony, see if you agree with me. I think, and Chad, the logical place to put that in is our internal controls checklist.
I think so.
Okay. So
Just
noted.
add that to the internal controls checklist.
And you could also ask for the names of the directors and trustees, because I
We
was,
do that.
we do, okay, that'll give you the number,
Right.
and those that have a small number, they could be encouraged to, I think we said in our meetings, go to the town, because it's the towns, if these cemeteries fail, it's gonna have to take it over. They have a vested interest to really find some trustees for these cemeteries.
Yeah. Good. All right. I like that.
That's good stuff.
I like the training questions, that's good. All right, so Tony will be meeting with interested parties, and I imagine that even before next meeting, you'll be circulating a proposed draft that we can actually review and then hopefully take action on next meeting. That would be just hunky-dory.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. What else you got, Tony?
That's all I have.
Yeah, one thing that we did have last meeting that we discussed was the review of the columbarium application, which now is a full-blown application. And
Right.
there was some discussion as to whether or not that could be truncated in light of small projects or anything. Have you had any?
No,
I delegated that to Mike, so I'm gonna blame him if we didn't do anything.
All right, I would like to pursue that, just to, to be responsive and make sure that we're not using a sledgehammer to kill a fly. So-
I mean, honestly, our initial reaction is that it kind of, while I hear their point, if you start looking at the specific things that you might omit, other than omitting the posting requirement, possibly not requiring postings, which aren't that big a deal for something that's really, really, really small,
Right,
it's not that big a deal. When the project gets smaller, it's just not that big a deal to do this. It inherently becomes less big of a deal to do the stuff that's required in the mausoleum reg.
yeah, and do all those come before the board right now? We've not ever delegated any authority on that,
No.
have we?
You could delegate we could have the same application, but you could delegate to us the ability to review columbaria under a certain size or height or what have you.
Yeah, I was thinking, I was just thinking that, so that's something we can consider, all right? But I'll await your formal opinion come next meeting. Okay. All right.
Like, you and I should really, block out time to talk about this instead of me saying, hey, Mike, you do this, and Mike says, sure, in my copious spare time. Because if we don't block out time, it's never gonna get done.
Yeah. All right, we'll chat about it. Okay, Louis, it's your turn, division report.
Oh, okay, division report.
Now, you're more animated on the phone, you know that?
I gotta make up for the lack of the loud shirt.
Okay. So,
Yeah, the division report is Ebola.
okay,
We've gotten literally a barrage of calls about two things. One is how cemeteries or crematories are supposed to deal with the disposition of the remains of Ebola victims, New York cemeteries, I should say.
Yes.
And number two, do they have to, in fact, accept such victims? As to the first question, the CDC has put out some degree of guidance that's already out there, and I am working on, I got to figure out how to do this, where the department has changed procedures, but I want to get a link to the CDC's guidance. It's mostly for mortuary workers, that's what they call it, but it does cover cemeteries a bit. But I want to get a link to that on our website, so people who check our website can find it. Beyond that, I think that if I were the CDC, I probably could have come up with greater detail fleshing out the piece of that applies to cemetery. I'm not the CDC. Nobody in this department is really qualified to discuss infectious diseases. We do have the good fortune of having a representative of the Department of Health with us today, although I don't know that Bob is himself qualified to talk about infectious diseases, but logically we should work with DOH. They haven't issued any funeral director guidance, or at least no public funeral director guidance on cemeteries, on Ebola, for Ebola yet. They've issued one for hospitals. So I think we need to discuss with the Department of Health what else public health experts could say that we could then disseminate to cemeteries to flesh out further information about this beyond what's in the CDC release.
Yeah, we're very fortunate to have the Department of Health as a board member.
Right.
Because obviously the expertise resides there, or the ability to acquire the expertise resides in the Department of Health. And I don't want to put words in Bob's mouth, but Bob, you want to just maybe update folks on what potentially is going on?
Well, it's a very active period in DOH right now, probably one of the most active ones that I've ever been involved with up to this point. We have been working very closely with hospitals and clinics and expanding that to all sorts of diagnostic and treatment centers with training, CDC guidance, which is constantly evolving. There's almost new issuance every day. Our plan is to get information out to the funeral directors. Deb Arecki, amongst others, is working on that. However, it's a very fluid situation at this point as to discussions on what to do with remains. From the funeral director's perspective, our view is that if the situation, and it probably will happen, where someone dies in this state from Ebola, that the body, the remains would be prepped to the point where when a funeral director is called on site, the remains will be packaged such in a secure manner that, for instance, the funeral director will not be required to wear any PPE equipment of that nature, much like the rest of the hospital staff will be required to do. The CDC's initial guidance that one person dies, that first they be wrapped in plastic, the dimensions of which I'm not familiar with at this point. And again, with the sensitivity of handling someone with Ebola or someone who has died from Ebola, just the mere fact of wrapping a person or remains into plastic would be a challenge in and of itself. So right now we're focused on the, working with CDC with the right type of PPE equipment, because obviously what's happened in Texas, it's undetermined at this point if there's a breakdown in the type of equipment that was used, or there was a breakdown in protocol in terms of infection control procedures that now 2 nurses, have been exposed. So it's very much a evolving, fluid situation. It's a very active situation, and we are working with CDC and continue to work with them. And certainly funeral directors and cemeteries are, and how remains would be handled are on the radar screen.
Yeah, and we're going to need, obviously, the protocol that will be applied for, I will note that we're about to be recorded, which I have no problem with, but the protocol for funeral directors will be equally applicable for cemeterians.
Correct.
Obviously, what we're talking about is how to properly encase the body so that disease transmission is rendered impossible.
It sounds like this is making a lot of assumptions, and again, I know I'm not a public health expert, but it sounds like if that, God, I don't want to use the word bagging, but I can't come up with another one. If the containment of the body at a place of death in the hospital is done properly according to the CDC protocol, and the outside of the outer container is sprayed with bleach or another hospital-grade disinfectant, it sounds like the risk to a funeral director or a cemetery or crematory worker or anyone else in the chain of transporting that body is actually zero.
Oh, yeah, but you know, Louis, I mean,
That's making a lot of
we're
assumptions.
speculating, and we don't have the expertise to speculate, you know?
You know, Louis, in a perfect world scenario, that is the goal, that by the time a body is ready to be picked up by a funeral director, the risk of transmission is zero. But I think those exact protocols are still being
Right.
worked on to get the situation to that point where there is zero risk to a funeral director and subsequently to any
Right.
cemetery-related employees.
And so I would also ask DOH to focus on the ultimate disposition of the body, cremation and interment, and what is appropriate, what isn't appropriate, because folks will need to know, you know. So it's obviously we haven't got absolute answers right now. Bob's told us that DOH is actively, probably feverishly, developing an approach to this, and we will have information as soon as we get it. And Louis, with respect to your link to the CDC information, Bob mentioned that I guess they're evolving protocol.
Well, this one hasn't evolved between yesterday and today.
Right. I'm just thinking that is DOH posting anything on its website linking to CDC?
Constantly.
So maybe it's better to maybe, and I think that maybe Louis,
was gonna say that.
you or Bob can talk, or you and whoever's responsible at DOH to link to DOH.
A lot of the information you're looking for, Louis, is going to the DOH website, and there's a Ebola.
Is it there already?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but does it cover stuff about, issues?
Not specifically yet, other than what
This is
CDC is
specific
guiding.
to that.
All right, but I don't want, I just don't want to risk having information out there which is superseded and we don't keep up with it because we don't know. So I think we
So
should.
why don't we just put a link on our website saying check the CDC and DOH's website?
I think that's a more
And knowing that
appropriate
we have
thing.
not posted a link to specific areas
Yeah.
of those websites because the agencies are updating them.
That's my,
And,
that
links
answers
are
my
good.
concern. That's what I'd like to do.
Or maybe we should just tell everybody that. If they don't see it on the website, they'll call and we'll just tell everybody that. That's
Well, I
easier.
don't have a problem putting it on the website. I mean,
Yeah, but
because-
it makes no sense to post something on the website.
All right,
and tell anyone.
let's talk about that later.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, but we still have that one question, can they refuse? I guess I should defer to Tony on this, but my reading is, no, they can't unless we say otherwise.
Yeah, I think it's premature to answer that question. I really
Right.
do, because we're not faced with that situation yet. And I think in order to formulate, an answer, we're going to need some medical expertise,
In the
or
past,
scientific expertise. Yep.
we've viewed the regs and statute as having an inherent discretion. If a container is brought for cremation and there's fluids leaking,
Oh, clearly.
So there's nothing in the statute that says that, but there's inherent discretion right into it. So, but
That being
we
said,
would have to put parameters on that discretion.
yeah. So, and we need to understand what the consequences are, what the scientific
Right.
literature is on this.
We're
So-
also seeking information from Texas.
Yes.
To see how they did handle one person who died.
Now, the issue of plastic wrapping actually creates an issue for the crematories and cemeteries, because if you're going to cremate the body and it's wrapped in plastic, the plastic's going to burn and create smoke and fumes. We don't normally permit plastic containers to go into a retort.
Okay, that came from CDC.
Right. So that's going to create an issue. And even for burials, because there are religions where the intent of burial is that the body decomposes, and
Yes.
plastic
Yep.
inhibits that. So we should
There-
be involved in the
There
discussions.
are those issues as well.
Yeah.
So, Bob, can we link up Tony with his counterpart in DOH? Because we really do need to coordinate this. And, science and safety is going to dictate what happens here, I'm sure. Not our call. But everybody needs to know what the issues are so that we can address them. Okay, so.
I mean, the other thing about Tony's comment about cremation and smoke is, even if we were disposed to say, that's fine, this is Ebola, come on, isn't the smoke aspect of cremation DEC's call and not ours?
Yeah, DEC has a regulatory structure with respect to emissions at crematories, so that would be, but again, we're going too far afield here because we don't know what's going to happen. But it will involve DEC if we have to involve DEC. All right.
Yeah, I mean, typical emergencies like this are sort of, we always compare it to a bell-shaped curve situation, and we haven't even started to go up on the
Yeah,
curve.
exactly
yet.
right.
Yeah, so it's very much evolving, and a lot more information. And certainly if more cases develop, that's going to change.
That's going to change
the game as well. So.
Yep. All right. Everything else is going to be easy compared to that discussion. Next topic, Louis?
For the division report?
Yeah.
I don't have much of anything else, just basically we're ramping up for a new season of continuing education events for funeral directors about cemetery and crematory law. Instead of the overview of the law with Debbie Arecki's approval, actually at her suggestion, we're moving to a sort of common scenarios interactive kind of program. I get to play law professor, as does Cindy. We're going to call on people and stuff, where we're going to go through common issues that occur in interments and disinterments.
Good. Okay.
And that's where we're doing it throughout the state. We've also got the NISAC Regional coming up in Oneonta, where we're going to do a stripped down version of that, plus a further update on the Revitalization Act and a discussion of internal controls.
Excellent.
In that vein, we are working on trying to come up with deciding what we think a minimal conflict of interest policy would be for a cemetery. That doesn't mean that we're going to issue guidance on that yet. We'd obviously have to talk to your office, first Tony, but then your office, Chris, to make sure we're not operating at cross purposes. It's really your statute, not ours. But as a purely internal exercise, we want to see if we can come up with something real simple on conflict that your mom and pop cemetery with 3 people meeting in someone's kitchen would be able to adopt and meaningfully use.
Right. Super. All right. Thank you.
I hopefully will have something for you guys in advance of the next meeting.
Okay. Just circulate it. Thanks, Louis. All right, Chet, vandalism report.
Yes. Fiscal year ending March 31st, 2015, vandalism fees collected were $29,800. Applications granted total $388,328, and applications pending are at $352,267.
All right.
Of the applications granted, one was for vandalism for $8,245. 7 applications were for restoration or hazardous monumentation, totaling $160,682, and 2 applications regarding abandoned cemeteries total $219,401.
Thank you.
Chet, remind me, in an abandonment application, what are they asking?
It's generally the town that's taken over a cemetery,
The town is asking.
but with the change to the statute, a cemetery can also take over an abandoned cemetery. So, and they can apply for funds to, as we refer to it, as a one-time cleanup, if you will. So it can require, they could put in for a fence surrounding or enclosing the cemetery to have a little more control over access to the cemetery. They can also improve the safety concerns, for example, improvement of interior roads and security lighting, and then some equipment if it doesn't also cross over to town, maintenance purposes.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
We actually have an application such as that last month, which was tabled because some of which was within the application maybe had like a dual purpose. So we're actually reaching out to them to see if there's any prorating of that which they put in, yeah.
Is that still tabled, or are we ready?
That is still tabled.
Okay.
It's on the agenda, just.
Right, just a placeholder.
So that application comes from either a town or another cemetery?
That is correct.
All right, so we have one on the agenda to deal with today, and that was Eastern Village Cemetery, vandalism in the amount of $1,050. The only thing that I saw that was unusual, well, not so unusual about this, is that they chose not to advertise, I assume with our blessing, because they felt that it would be harmful to the cemetery's reputation.
They re-
by vandalism in the future.
They requested, and I said I would include it in the application and leave it to the board to determine. They could go back at this point, but their thought was, and I agree, the monuments are extremely old, and it is a small village cemetery. So they felt that the chances of someone coming forward were much smaller than the chances that it would harm, new sales in the cemetery, or specifically invite more vandalism.
Well, that's whether the monuments are old or not, the notice requirement to me would apply, all right? But the issue that we dealt with before, and that's real and legitimate, is that in some situations, an advertisement can invite further vandalism. And so the question I have for the division, for you, is that basis, from your knowledge of the cemetery, an appropriate basis upon which to not have them advertised?
I think that there's a chance that it could invite more vandalism.
Okay. We have no problem with that.
No.
All right.
Mike, is insurance generally available to cover this kind of vandalism?
Usually the small cemeteries don't have insurance that would cover that.
The statute also says they don't have insurable interest in the monument.
The monuments are actually owned by the lot owner or the person who placed them there. In the past, we've required them to put out the notice, and then if they contacted lot owners, or if lot owners came forward, have them approach their homeowner's insurance. And generally, unless they have a specific rider on their policy to cover that monument, which, a 100-year-old monument probably covered. And we requested letters and received them from the insurance people indicating whether they were or were not covered. In this case, they didn't have anyone come forward, so we requested that.
All right.
I mean, in this case in particular, given the amount of money in question, does it really make sense to require an advertisement, leaving all of that aside?
Well, we already decided that we're not going to because of the potential harm to the cemetery on this particular one. But I don't think it's limited. I mean, the notification provision is there to encourage the actual owner of the monument to act responsibly and to take care of it. And whether or not it's effective, and most often, as we unfortunately know, is not effective, nevertheless, it's a matter philosophically that I think we have to adhere to. So unless there's a problem.
I'm going to reserve the right to try to convince you guys to accept the de minimis exception at some future date.
Okay, you can argue that later. Anyway, in this case, we have Eaton Village Cemetery pending before us, in the amount of $150. Anybody want a motion? Or second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, just a couple of things on the agenda. It's a short agenda today. We have the first being Milltown Rural Cemetery for columbarium. And before getting into real discussion, I have to confess my ignorance. What's a cremorial unit and what are cremation boulders?
I figured you were gonna ask because it's kind of new to me as well.
Okay, so I'm not the only, good, I'm glad.
Well, they're essentially more niche space in a different form. Here's a picture of the memorial unit. The boulders are just boulders that hold cremains. In the niche, the memorial units are the same. They're just bronze units that are niche space that are
Boulders, okay. $6,000 a piece boulders, wow.
How does this differ from a columbarium? Not the boulders, but the memorial thing.
Well, they're different shape for one. They're on the ground, and whereas columbarium is more of an upright unit, these cremorials they're not flush to the ground, but they're not, they're only raised to maybe a foot from the ground or so.
Just a few inches.
Few inches. We have Dick Hazard here, who was the president of Milltown.
Oh, great.
So maybe better prepared to answer the design of them, because I'm not real familiar with them. This is the first application that I've had that has suggested that they wanted to install.
It also looks like the units in the cremorial actually accept the remains rather than a niche where you put in an urn.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, you need do you need an urn for these, or do you just?
You can use the urn the normal rectangular one that comes from the crematory, or it can be a regular urn, but the shape is going to depend on it. That's going to make the difference. And if people are going to purchase some, these are on the walkway going up to the octagonal columbarium, and they're kind of in the ground.
Yes.
All right, and one on one side, one on the other, and they're less expensive than what we're going to have to charge for the columbarium.
Right.
And some people like the idea they're in the ground too.
They're very attractive. Yeah, but by the way, I didn't catch your name.
Dick Hazard, Hazzard.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
So if we have questions, we'll direct them to you. I see that the expected payback on this is $96,000, a little bit less than doubling your money, 7% annual return. What are you making now on your permanent maintenance fund investments?
Very little.
Yeah. Okay, not 7%.
We're basically, we used to make enough to cover our contract every year and plus, but we're barely covering our contract now.
Right.
That doesn't go down with what's going on in the economy. We're just searching for places to put the money.
Yeah, me too. By the way, I want to compliment you. I see that you, for a great many years, have put in 50% of your proceeds to the PM fund, that you intend to continue with that, with the proceeds from this. That's really remarkable that you've been able to do that.
All the cemetery board are plot owners whose history is the Brewster area or Putnam County area.
Yeah.
And we all have the same attitude. We want to see this go on into perpetuity.
Right. And I see that you're going to do this in like quarterly payments. You want to describe the financing, how you plan to do this?
You mean as far as the payment of this?
Mhm. Yeah.
It's like building a house. I mean, once we give them the okay, which is hopefully this afternoon sometime, we start doing it one step at a time, the foundation, and then ordering the actual units. And if we have everything organized, it should be done by December. We're getting close to that time when we have to wait till next spring. And then what we'll be paying is like when he finishes like installation, we'll have probably another 2 or 3 payments, and that'll take us into next year, I'm sure.
Right. Division, what's your opinion on this?
It seems like a good project. It's to fulfill the growing need of columbariums in the area. My first initial reaction was it was costly, and that's why I guess you see in my report, I suggested maybe they wanted to put in 4 memorial units to start, and the boulders. I don't know about the boulders, they might not sell, they're very expensive, so I suggested maybe they size back on that, which cut the total expense down considerably. So if they sell, hopefully sales will go well with the unit, and then they can always add on.
Yeah, I thought that was wise.
Does the boulder just take one urn or one canister?
It can take more than one, but normally what I'm used to, I've never sold anything like this. I've been a funeral director for 45 years, so I'm not a cemeterian. But the way I understand it is a family would buy the boulder, and the boulder has holes in the back say you put the cremated remains in and it gets sealed up, so it can be several sets of cremains.
I can ask, okay, just explain it.
Right.
I wasn't sure if the report indicated what local approvals you needed and if you already have them.
We spoke to our town, and one of our board members is a former supervisor, so the town planning board, I guess it would be, is kind of saying whatever New York State says.
That's refreshing. Thank you.
Well, not all of New York State.
Very good. Yeah, I mean, I find this to be, looks like a fine project to me. Have you had any requests for this, for this kind of service?
Actually, since when I first started talking to Mr. Green, and we had to post the notices
Yep.
at the gates and at our shed, our office, we don't have an office. We've had quite a few phone calls about it.
Right.
There's only 3 names that are listed on the information sheet, but I've gotten calls, our secretary's gotten calls. Well, when is this going to be ready?
Right.
And how much is it going to be? So we're generating some interest.
That's great.
What we're planning is, once it's up and running, once it's going, is to develop a brochure that we can hand out to all the funeral directors, not only our county, but in Connecticut, because we're only 6 miles from Connecticut. And there's Danbury is a population of 400, 200,000 people. So, we don't mind drawing them over to our side of the line,
Very good.
as long as they got the money.
Spoken like a true entrepreneur. That's great. All right, anybody, any other questions or comments on this application? None, right? Motion?
I'll move to accept the application.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Good luck.
Thank you
Looks
very
like a great
much.
project.
We'll keep you posted.
Keep that 50% contribution rate up, that's wonderful. All right, the next item on the agenda is New Forest Cemetery, and it's sort of here as a preliminary matter. I think that the cemetery was looking for some guidance to make sure that when their application was complete, that we would have everything we needed to make an expeditious decision on it. And I'm glad they did, because I had some questions. Let's see, before I do that, Division, why don't you brief us? Who's going to brief us on this?
It's a cemetery that's located right in the heart of Utica, and there's 2 contiguous cemeteries. There's another not-for-profit, and there's a religious one right next to them. So they've struggled, and they don't really have a lot of income. What they're really looking to do is open up a new section, clear the land, and hopefully bring in some more income from these lot sales. And they need a truck. They need a used truck. And they don't really have much in their general fund. And pretty much they've reduced costs to as low as you could possibly get them. It's not really a matter that they mismanage their funds, it's just a competition.
Well, I see in 2004, I mean, they have a PM deficit right now of around $87,000.
That goes way back.
Right, goes way back. Now, in 2004, they met with the division, and probably, we really do have to figure out if we can go to court for these cemeteries that haven't gotten any money, because we didn't, we sort of did a gentleman's agreement with them, and they were gonna put the interest, $3,000 a year or whatever,
Right.
into paying that back, long term. And they weren't able to do that the last couple of years,
Yes.
and that's been with the division's awareness.
Yes.
Okay, that was important to me. All right. So the division was aware and acquiesced because there's no way they could do
There's
this.
just no money.
All right.
I mean, sorry, Joe, I lost you for 1 sec. I mean, one thing that's really worth pointing out here is they have absolutely cut expenses to the bone. And notwithstanding that, and without meaning to offend any of our neighboring, our other regulated cemeteries, their cemetery looks, frankly, significantly better than Forest Hill Cemetery next door to them, which is significantly wealthier. I mean, they're doing a real bang-up job at maintaining the place.
So how much have they got in their PM fund right now?
400?
Well, close to 600,000.
All right.
Sorry.
And this
I didn't
project,
read
with the truck will cost around 87. Right.
67.
I got 13.4 to clear the land, 43.5 for the road. That's 67. Okay, I got it. I was looking at one
And
number.
they're estimating a used truck. for
Yeah, 10 grand, okay. What are the projections? I mean, you said hopefully, this will hopefully increase business.
It's kind of in a prime area where they've sold lots in this area, but the problem is, it's not accessible, this section that they want to develop, so they're gonna have to put roads in and do some landscaping, and they think they could get a, good lot price for,
So here's the issue for me, all right? And I'm glad it's before us on a preliminary basis so we can scope this out. The issue really is this a cemetery that needs to die and be turned over with some money, all right, for the town?
What town?
it's in a city, that's the
Oh,
problem.
my goodness,
That's
this is
the
the one in
problem.
the city. This isn't the one that's straddling two municipal boundaries, is it?
No.
No, this one's
It's right in
fully
the heart
within
of
the city.
Utica.
Well, that sort of changes the complexion, because I was prepared to have a philosophical discussion about when is it time to cut the ties.
And look, it might very well be that with $600,000 in the bank, the city of Utica wants it, but I sincerely doubt it.
Well, but there's also, I mean, I'm not saying, I'm not advocating that. I thought we needed to discuss it because I want to know if this, I want the division to have a good sense as to whether or not this development of the cemetery land will in fact perpetuate the longevity of the cemetery to a significant degree, whether in fact it will be successful, all right? Because we need to know that, all right? Or at least have a handle on it. If it's just a crapshoot, then they're $67,000 in the hole and they're going down. And I don't want just a crapshoot, I want to have some expertise on this. So that's an area of inquiry I'd like to pursue.
I mean, but how scientific are we going to be able to get with that? I
Well,
mean,
Well, you know,
we could look at Forest Hill sales rates and see whether New Forest could be able to cannibalize, take a guess whether New Forest could cannibalize some of that if they were more accessible. We could look at the Catholic cemetery next door and see what they're doing. But this is really,
well, the cemetery also has considerable amount of expertise in what its traffic is and what the demand could be. But that, I mean, look, we have to get some knowledge of that, and I can't tell you what it is, all right, but I think we have to have an opinion as to whether or not this is a viable option for them. Because what they're asking us to do is to bless this without really having much hope of repaying it, although perhaps that will change. And by the way, obviously I'm going to want a fiscal, all right, I'm going to want to know what the potential for revenue is over what period of time, all right? It's sort of like a business plan for this, right?
I tried to project what their increase in sales would be, opening up this new section.
Mhm.
And, I mean, they're really operating on the border now, like small losses, maybe a few small surpluses. It seems like this would put them in a good position, in a better position.
All right, but we'll have, I'm going to want that expanded for the next meeting.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what the Kono Trust is and the Schwab Trust,
oh god.
and what the terms of those are?
It's not off the top of my head.
Did you look at any documents?
These were trusts from years ago. One of them was invaded, but it was paid back. Schwab, I think, is just for the family, just for the
Private trust?
Well,
private
is there any
trust.
reason they couldn't use those proceeds?
We've looked into that. No, that was,
And secondly, what is that payroll, 31,000? Who are they paying to do what?
well, they have, right now, they just have one superintendent and a few part-timers that are pretty much doing everything.
Was there any discussion of shared
We tried that.
personnel with the other cemeteries?
They said that they would help out occasionally on holidays and that, but they didn't want to become involved.
They didn't want to share. This,
They don't
or
want
the others
to
don't
merge
want to share.
right, they don't.
Who doesn't want to share? Nobody?
Yeah.
The one next to them that has the money.
Joe, they're generating $35,000 to $40,000 in interest and dividends. Where's that coming from?
The PM fund is generating, they've got a lot of high yield bond funds that are doing pretty well. they're squeezing everything they can out of this, and it's just a matter of competition.
So they don't have a general fund account?
It's minimal. It fluctuates between $800 and $1,200. Whatever they get, they have to use for operations.
Does anybody else have any guidance for the division in terms of the?
I mean, so far I've heard is we need more detail on their projections. I don't know how much more detail we're gonna be able to get. I mean, the other possibility is for them to take a PM loan with a payment holiday on this.
Well, yeah, my usual response to this is that let's put in repayment and make it contingent on something so that if they can repay, it gets repaid. An outright grant is not something that the board has been disposed to, but of course we recognize that there are situations, perhaps such as this, where the PM fund is the only viable way to finance an improvement which will benefit the cemetery and extend its longevity. And if that's the case, we'll make it happen, But as a philosophical matter, I hate to see grants going out of the PM fund.
Well, yeah, but also the question of these two trusts, whether those funds could be, I mean, if the cemetery is going down the hole,
Right.
I think we'd want to know what's going to happen to these trust monies.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that Tony would have to help with. I suspect their private trusts would have to be
Yeah,
broken.
and I don't know what family members would be available to contact.
Well,
I don't know
Well,
how
the
you-
cemetery must be managing those trusts.
Yep.
Right.
According to their terms, or should
Yes.
be anyways.
There was an issue at some point about whether the trust could be used for purposes other than a particular family grave, and the cemetery actually got a court order allowing it, and then the AG got involved in the court, walked back the order, and they've since repaid any money they've used.
really?
But there was some ambiguity at one point in time as to the proper uses of the trust. This wasn't a situation where they just helped themselves to the money. There was, in fact, a good faith argument for it.
Wasn't there an analysis, was it the prudent management of institutional funds that was released a couple years back that addressed the concern or handling of trust fund assets?
It wasn't the investment, it was what they were using it for.
Right.
Joe, am I getting this right?
Well, why don't we?
But doesn't that address the use of?
No. I mean, yes and no.
You covered all the bases, Louis.
How about maybe?
No, Chad, you're confusing two different things.
Yeah.
NIFMESA says that if you have a true trust, that's not one of our cemetery trusts, you can use not only appreciation, but a historic dollar value for the purposes of the trust, provided you're not spending presumptively more than 7%, and provided you meet an 8-factor test, and this, that, and the other thing. That doesn't say you can go and take money that was intended to spend on, say, education, and use it for, say, buying shoes.
You would need to have
It
court action
didn't change
blessing that.
anything to do with the purpose of the trust, and the litigation that they had to do with the purpose of the trust, not how deeply they'd gone into it.
Well, let's go take a look at that. I mean, Chris's point.
But
is
that's
a good one.
like years ago. I guess the only issue now is what would happen if the place were to go under. Is there any argument that they could use these trust funds more for things other than these particular
Yeah,
families?
and that's something, so let's get the trust language itself, so we can.
But Chris,
review
we'll
it.
need you to be involved in this because your office did weigh in on this at one point.
Okay, if you can tell me what they did.
Right.
Yeah. We have Joe, you have the papers on this somewhere. I think I might too.
All right, let's call them up and we'll have some discussion
Okay.
off the table. Okay, good. All right, so anybody else have anything else they'd like to see in this application? We'll have it on for next meeting, and
So financially, Dan, you're looking for?
I'm looking for projections. I'm looking for projections based upon whatever information you can glean, or the cemetery can glean with respect to demand. I'm going to want to see, projections in terms of annually how, what the expected revenue is, I mean, you're developing, it's a business proposition, right? In the sense,
Right.
it's a business, they're also serving the community, by the way. I'm not
Yes.
saying, I mean, this is, maintaining the cemetery and expanding it is good if there's a demand. If there's no demand, it's a white elephant, that's a real problem.
I think there's demand, there's interest in the
All
cemetery.
right, so, show us next month.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want to mention, since you just said next month, or next meeting?
Oh, yes, next meeting. Thank you. Are we going back to the third Thursday, the 20th? That sound good to
I
everybody?
assume so.
That sounds appropriate, not having a calendar in front of me, but otherwise you're bumping into Thanksgiving.
There is this, you know what's fine, there's this inspection Kaizen for that, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be attending, but I guess I can duck out in Albany, but I guess I can duck out from the meeting.
Yeah, I don't want that to get in the way. Let's.
So let's say it, I'll put it on my calendar.
Let's say it for now. You know, we'll make, okay. So the 20th.
Maybe I'll have learned some Japanese by then.
Very good. All right. So our next meeting will be the 20th. New Forest will be on the calendar for next month. And we have now, at this point, come to the end of our public agenda. And what I always do at this point is to open up the board for comments. The public can chat with us on whatever issue you would care to chat with us on. So, anybody like to say hello? Mr. Fleming?
David Fleming from the New York State Association of Cemeteries. We appreciate the conversation about Ebola and the infectious diseases. Our concern from the association's perspective, we've been receiving a number of phone calls from cemeterians. There are other guidance documents that are circulating that are contrary, particularly from the New York City Medical Examiner's Office, and directions to cemeteries and crematory operators, which are in direct conflict, or in some cases may be in direct conflict with state cemetery law as well as regulations of the State Cemetery Board. It puts our members in a very difficult situation, and not the least of which concerns are the emission permits that are associated with crematories. And the direction that we would have with the consumer, which may be contrary to religious observance, is also a concern. And while we respectfully understand that this is an evolving situation, it's not just Ebola, it's an infectious disease generally, and the association has long had a real concern about how to address these issues. And so respectfully, we would request that there be some sort of perhaps an informal task force with the Cemetery Board, DEC, and DOH to provide some guidance that's not contrary to existing statute or regulation, or that may be a supplement to that, as Mr. Malillo pointed out, that there may be some flexibility because of a public health crisis. But this is it's not just Ebola, it's a number of other issues. And just to finally point out, a lot of the guidance, particularly from New York City, focuses on funeral directors transporting the remains. Well, that's all well and good, except our crematory operators are handling those remains through the retort process or in the burial. And I think it's appropriate that the regulatory body in charge of our folks give us some firm direction. We'd be happy to participate in any way if you'd like us to provide information, or even individuals that would be able to be available to answer questions or discuss their operations.
All very good suggestions, of course. We'll be coordinating with our sister agencies.
But in particular, the New York City issue is a
Yeah, thank you for bringing that to our attention. I'm sure that DOH is on top of that, but, yeah.
Everything's good, Dave, thank you.
You're right. Good, thank you. Anybody else?
Dan?
You're not a member of the
Nancy
public.
just got a call from somebody at New Forest. Is there any purpose to be served in reaching out to them directly, or should Joe and I just do it offline and write it up?
I would do it offline at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, we've had enough discussion today. You know where we're going.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yep, okay. Anybody else? All these people here, nobody wants to say hello. Hello, everybody. All right, well, in that case, what I'll do is we'll be going on a 5-minute break, but after that, we'll go into executive session for investigative and litigative matters. That's my motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Enjoy the boy.
Why?